Welcome back to the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. Joining me today is Mary McGowan, of course, well known to people who listen to the podcast. She is the Chief Executive Officer for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. But also joining me today is Emily Dickens, JD. She is the Chief of Staff and Head of Government Affairs and Corporate Secretary for the Society of Human Resources Management, and that is an executive team that they're called SHRM, an executive team member. She is responsible for implementing the CEO's vision, corporate communications, corporate governance, global policy, government affairs, and the organization's real property, and she never sleeps. No way you do all that and never sleep. But Mary and Emily, welcome to the Sarc Fighter podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, let me get started here today. And Mary, let's just kind of set the table. Give us a brief introduction to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research, because we probably have some people listening here who are on the human resources side as opposed to the sarcoidosis side. Sarc people know you well, but tell us about FSR and your role and what all is happening here today from your perspective.
Great. Thank you, John. And before I get started on myself, I just want to thank Emily so much for joining us today. I actually have a master's in human resources development. And so SHRM holds a very special place in my heart. I know how important and critical the work is that human resources professionals are doing across the globe. And anyway, just want to start out by saying thank you so much for joining us. And it's just great that we're partnering together on this really important initiative. So I'm Mary McGowan. I'm the president and CEO for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research, also known as FSR. FSR is the leading international nonprofit dedicated to finding a cure for sarcoidosis and improving care through research, education, and support. Since our founding in 2000, and by the way, that means that we're celebrating our 25th year anniversary this year, we have invested over $8 million in sarcoidosis-specific research and built a lot of programs to educate, support, and connect patients and caregivers worldwide. We also advocate nationally to address health inequities and break down barriers patients face. Work that includes our national Ignore No More campaign that we're going to be talking a lot about today. And so very excited again to have this opportunity. But as CEO, very briefly, I focus on advancing our mission, building partnerships, and making sure the patient voice and elevated research guides everything that we do at FSR. And just real quickly, for those who may not know what sarcoidosis is, it is an inflammatory disease, and it's characterized by the formation of tiny clumps of inflammatory cells that form granulomas. And these granulomas can enter into any of the organs in your body. And so when the immune system goes into overdrive and too many of these granulomas form, they can actually interfere with an organ structure and function.
Yeah, and that's bad when that happens.
Yes.
Yeah, and so instead of doing good, which is what immune cells would typically do, they tend to attack whatever it is that wherever they decide to call home. And unfortunately, often that's a place that's critical to a person's survival and functionability. So,
and actually, John,
yeah.
just to add to that, so that people are aware, many people who have sarcoidosis have multi-organ involvement. So it's in many organs, and 90% of the people with sarcoidosis, they do have at least lung involvement. But again, many times other involvement such as cardiac in their heart or ocular in their eyes, and many of the other organs that we all have in our bodies.
Gotcha. Well, Mary, thank you for that. So now listeners know what sarcoidosis is and what FSR is about. So, Emily, I want to turn to you. Tell us about the Society for Human Resources Management, which we're just going to say SHRM. That's what everybody
right.
That's what everybody says, right?
Yes.
What's your role there in helping professionals kind of prepare for the constantly changing needs in our workforce these days?
Well, John, I want to thank you, and Mary, thank you. And I'd just like to say the name of someone personal to me who is living with sarcoidosis, Jackie Robinson of Durham, North Carolina, who was our tax guy. Like, he was kind enough for years when my husband and I first got married, and he became an amazing friend and supporter, and is with us, has had the disease for some time, but he's a Sarc fighter. And so I just wanted to make sure I said his name, and I know that there is a face that comes with this disease. And so happy to be here today. And hopefully he listens, but if not, I'm gonna send him a text when I get off of here to make sure he does. So, Sharm, we're over almost 77-year-old organization founded in the middle of this country for the purpose of being the membership and trade association for HR professionals. Then they were called personnel. Now they are HR professionals. And we have 340,000 members throughout the world. Chapters in every state in the USA, as well as we're in about 170 or so countries as well. Just returned from the UK and Ghana, meeting with some of our members over there. More importantly, we think we impact the lives of 362 million workers. So our members impact those workers in the workplace every day. And so I have the privilege of being the head of government affairs and a couple of other things here at SHRM. And policy is important, but because we believe that in three things. We believe in awareness, advocacy, and action as it relates to critical issues. And our job is to make sure that our HR professionals who every day are trying to improve the lives and livelihoods of America's workers have the resources they need to do their jobs. But also, I get the privilege of being their voice on Capitol Hill and in state capitals when there are policies that we think our elected officials can do better about. We want to make sure our voice is in the room and that we're helping to change policy so that it works for workers and the workplace. In addition to that, we do research on critical workplace issues and have a number of other products and items that support people managers and all those who are working in the world of work. So it is a privilege to be here today.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And so we're going to dive into this a little bit here. First of all, Mary, the Ignore No More initiative, which you came up with. We've talked about it a lot on the podcast. I'm a big supporter of that. But walk us through its origins and tell me how that campaign eventually led to what we're talking about here today, which is this FMLA clarification, which protects clinical trial participants and their caregivers so they can feel free to go and participate in a clinical trial if they want to. So connect those two dots, Ignore No More and the FMLA development.
Well, thank you, John, for that question. So Ignore No More began back in October 21. That's when the campaign initially kicked off. And the reason why we kicked this campaign off is because we recognize the inequities facing Black sarcoidosis patients. The statistics were staggering when we looked at this. Black patients are 2.5 times more likely to develop sarcoidosis, 9 times more likely to be hospitalized, and 12 times more likely to die from the disease compared to white patients. And for Black women, it's even worse. The disparities are, they're 3 times more likely to have the disease and 18 times more likely to be hospitalized, and they die at a much younger age. So we really wanted to do something about this. And of course, in sarcoidosis, there's currently no cure and very limited treatment options, and steroids are often the first line of treatment. But the research also shows that Black patients were more likely to be prescribed much higher doses and for longer periods of time. And that not only increases health challenges, as we know, and complications, but also adds to the burden patients face every day. So the data also showed that Black patients present with more severe disease. So, in other words, they have more organs impacted, more complications associated with that organ involvement. And anyway, these statistics were really, really staggering. So, in response to this, we started with awareness campaigns, which Ignore No More is, but quickly realized that awareness wasn't enough. You know, Black patients, again, underrepresented in clinical trials, and unless the people who are most impacted by the disease, unfortunately, with the highest prevalence and the worst outcomes, we won't learn as quickly as we need to learn about a rare disease like sarcoidosis. So that's why we launched our Act Now campaign, which is phase 2 of the Ignore No More. And this was focused on engaging Black patients in clinical trials. We wanted to hear directly from the community. So we conducted a national IRB approved survey that we sent out nationally in a press release asking the Black community living with sarcoidosis to please take time to fill out the 52-question questionnaire. And what came back was really eye-opening. We had 400 responses, but it was also very clear Black people wanted to participate in research, but they faced enormous barriers. They told us about the fear of losing their job if they took time off. They told us about the financial strain of missing work or covering travel costs to get it to a clinical trial site. And many spoke about the lack of compensation or support that made participation even feel possible to enroll in a clinical trial. So while the interest was there, the reality was that without protection and real practical support, many patients simply couldn't say yes to a trial, even when they wanted to. And that insight is what really drove us to look at workplace protections and ultimately to pursue the FMLA clarification as the most impactful solution that we could possibly achieve for the nation. So we published these findings in a white paper, shared them at a congressional briefing on Capitol Hill. And at the congressional briefing, we stated that FSR wanted to change the FMLA and get legal experts. And we did exactly that. We drafted a letter to the Department of Labor requesting first clarification that FMLA should cover clinical trial participation to the Department of Labor. At the same time, while all this was going on, we created a coalition called Transform Clinical Trial Engagement, bringing together other patient organizations and advocates in this space and industry partners to unite around strategies aimed at reducing these barriers that we have. We all did together 40 Congressional Hill visits with lawmakers about this FMLA clarification. And after about a year of sustained advocacy, we finally, in November of 24, just 10 months ago, we got a response from the Department of Labor issuing a very important clarification that FMLA now explicitly covers time off for clinical trial participation and coverage under FMLA. That means that patients and their family member caregiver finally have job protection to take part in medical research in America.
So before this, we're calling this the clarification. So the term FMLA clarification is a term we're using to describe what changed, right? Prior to the clarification, people were concerned about their jobs. And now with this clarification, those jobs are protected because we all know if you want to participate in a clinical trial, you might be driving a good distance, 2-3 hours, not unusual. You might be gone all day. You're not necessarily sick. I mean, if you're in the trial, you've got sarcoidosis, right? Or some other illness, some other reason to be in a clinical trial. But it might not be like the day that you feel the sickest, but you still can't be at work. So they can go and they can do that. And their job is protected. And did I hear you say also, Mary, a family member or caregiver's job is also protected?
Yes. a family member caregiver who is accompanying the person in the clinical trial, their job is also protected, which is a very big thing because many patients, they need their caregiver with them. And so that is part of the FMLA coverage as well.
All right. So now I want to turn to Emily. Emily, we all have, well, all of us who have a boss and have a company where we go to work, most of them have the HR departments. And now you've got this new clarification. When FSR's press release about this notice from the Department of Labor came out, what was your reaction? And now how has SHRM been working to let all these companies know that guess what? Here's the deal. You got to let them go and participate.
Well, I'll say this. Prior to learning of FSR's press release, SHRM was already working on workplace flexibility and leave. It is one of our policy pillars because we know that the world of today is much different even than the world of 32 years ago when FMLA was passed. And we need more flexibility and leave to be able to take care of our families. And so it's been a priority as a big issue before the clarification. But also, once we learned about it, we were excited that we know that there are partners all over working to make FMLA better for people. And so this was good because this is consistent with why we have FMLA. Right. It is about advocating for people to have the space to secure the care that they need. And it provides people just more certainty. Now, we have to always say, as much as we talk about federal FMLA, there are some employers who don't have the ability to provide paid leave, and there are some who don't. So not in every instance will the person be paid for the time off, but they will have the ability to have that time off. So for us, we started making further clarification for our members who every day have to answer questions, because if one of our Sarc fighters learned about this and came and said, now I want to take this time, depending on the employer, that time would either be paid or unpaid, right? So again, for us, it was getting that information and making sure that we got it out. When I talked earlier about that awareness, advocacy, and action, this allowed us to really lean into the awareness aspect of our work because the heavy lifting had been done by Mary and her team. And so for us, this is about making sure the HR professionals know about this. So when their employees come to them, they are able to answer their questions and concerns and to give them the guidance on leveraging this particular resource for them and their health and the health of their family. Caregiving, we could go into a whole other discussion about the impact of caregiving on the workplace now. Some of your best employees, you don't even know every day are taking care of their children and their parents. And they're tired, they're exhausted, there are whole other issues. And so giving them the additional flexibility to know that they could take those 3 or 4 hours off and charge it to FMLA so that they can take mom or dad or spouse where they need, it just really feeds more into the work that we're doing holistically about making sure that our workplaces provide the flexibility for their employees to take care of themselves and their families.
And of course, this clarification came down the pike, and I am sure that every year there are a gazillion things that are new if you're an HR person,
Yes.
right? FSR isn't the only one out there that wants something done in the realm of human resources. And I feel bad for HR people because on one hand, they're supposed to protect the company. On the other hand, they're supposed to be compassionate to the employee. And it's got to be tough. So let's put this in a real world situation. Somebody comes walking into the HR office and they say, "Hey, guess what? I'm in a clinical trial and you have to let me go, or kindly would you let me go?" But they hopefully know that they're supposed to be let go. What does that look like? How does, step by step, how does the employee and the HR person, how do they work together to get to the end result of the employee participating?
Great. Thank you for that question. I always tell everyone I'm an executive that gets to leverage the voice of the HR professional, but not one. But I know enough to be dangerous about these processes because we talk about them a whole lot. And number one, it starts with the culture of your organization. And we encourage HR professionals to have a culture where people feel comfortable talking to their manager, especially their direct people manager, about what is going on with them. And one of the ways I encourage people to do that is if you are struggling with some type of illness and you're figuring out how to do this, especially if you're a people manager or a leader, to share that because it opens the door for your employees to share. Because we would have no knowledge as a people manager that you have something going on and be able to talk to you because the discussion does not start with HR. And so I think that's my first big top line soundbite for you. The discussion starts with your people manager, because again, who would be impacted directly by your absence from the workplace? And you want that person to have the empathy and the information to understand the situation you're in. So that's where you start first. And then once that discussion is had, then you go to HR to find out, what does this mean for me? Is this time that I can take off and be paid? How do I request it? Am I eligible? Because in some organizations, generally you require 1 year and 1,250 hours, I think that is, Mary, with the employer before you're eligible for FMLA. So if you're a new employee, your experience could be different from the outset, or you could work in an organization that has open leave. And so it doesn't matter from day one, you get the time off and it's not an issue. So again, making sure you know the culture and what the policies are on your organization, and that this could be based on tenure and hours work, or it could just be based on what the flexibility is in the organization. And then also understanding, we talked to our HR professionals that understanding that compliance is just a starting point. Really listening to the person and what they've been going through, because there could be other resources that you can stack on top of the leave that they're asking about. And I think HR professionals have been very intuitive now once they're allowed in to figure out all the other ways they can help the whole employee. And I appreciate you saying that earlier about how HR finds itself at the center of the needs of the employer and the employee. But when you think about that, humans are your greatest resource. They're the largest number on the spreadsheet, right? When you think about the business, it is important to invest as much into them, because loyal employees who are good employees are the best thing for the bottom line. So if you start with that thought process and do whatever you can. Now, look, there are places that have less than 25 employees with one HR professional. And this is why it's also important to engage the people manager and to have these clear discussions about what's going on with you, but also to give the employer grace, because you don't know who else is struggling with some other disease. And so where they may want to sometimes give you that leave, giving them as much notice and leeway can really help you to help them. So what I tell employees is, don't always come to us with the problem, come to us with a couple of solutions. So you hear about a trial, even knowing that it's happening in 2 or 3 adjacent states and giving some additional information so you have optional dates. Going to your employer with that information can also be helpful, and getting to yes more often, just because they may not have the flexibility within the organization to give you that leave. So I just start to think broadly, but also think about how you can help the situation and how much information you can provide up front. Make sure that you communicate with your direct supervisor before going to HR. And then once you get in HR, share your story openly, because there are probably other resources that can help you.
That is HIPAA an issue right here? I mean, people feel like some people just don't want to talk about their story. So
I
how do you
get that.
navigate that?
Yeah, I get that. And that's absolutely up to them. They don't have to. I just think what we've talked about now, people talk about so many things at work that they never talked about before. This is important, right? We talk about all this outside stuff. We talk about what happened on Real Housewives last night. When it comes to your health, this is important. And I think developing the relationship with your leader enough to say, there's something going on with me, even if they don't want to say what it is, and I'm going to need leave. Or there's something going on with mom, and I'm the primary caregiver for this period of time. I would really appreciate your support. I'd like to talk to HR. So you haven't told anybody what's going on, other than you're going to need the time and you will be a caregiver for some period of time. But at least that allows that manager, who ultimately controls how your time is spent within the organization, to be more flexible. They're part of the solution, as opposed to someone that has to wait until HR tells them what to do.
Very good. I appreciate that, Emily. So Mary, so obviously from the patient perspective, there's a lot of benefits to the clarification. Is there a real world example of how some of these barriers have impacted people you could share?
Absolutely, John. And, as part of the Act Now campaign, we did host a few patient focus groups. And, we heard so many stories from patients who were worried about how joining a trial might hurt their job. So it wasn't just in the survey, but it was actually in these follow-up focus groups. And some talked about the strain of traveling distances and missing too many days of work, or just as Emily was talking about, juggling work and family and other appointments. And it was a real challenge, and particularly for those in the rare disease space. We know this, right? Because many of them have to travel long distances to participate in trials. And I just remember there was one patient in particular who described her fear of managing her responsibilities at work while she's dealing with potential side effects from a trial. She didn't know how she could talk to her supervisor before if her health started to impact her job performance. And so she was scared, again, that her job might be at risk. And so the clarification now from the Department of Labor really does change this by providing now that additional layer of security that we've been talking about, that at least secures their jobs and health insurance, as Emily said, for those who are eligible, depending on their circumstance. And the caregivers that they too can have the time that they need to both prioritize the health of the patient and take time off as needed without risking their job. So yes, many live circumstances prior to this that patients were talking about and finding as a significant barrier, which again is why FSR took the motivation to really try to make a change here. And it was really a great legal team that we had. We wanted to change the FMLA, and they said, let's go to the Department of Labor and ask them for clarification first, written clarification, because the lawyer said this will take years for you to change FMLA and you may never be successful. So let's put the ball in that court. And that was great advice and resulted in just an outstanding outcome for our country.
Fantastic. So, Emily, you've touched on this a little bit, this clarification. So how does it fit into SHRM's sort of broader efforts? I know you mentioned you're trying to modernize FMLA. It's a constantly evolving concept and series of rules and regulations and laws. How does this fit into what you were already trying to do?
Well, look, I love the fact that the end run around trying to reshape the whole document. I love that. And the person who thought to do that, you want smart, curious people around you all the time. That person absolutely gets it. And I think there are other ways we can do it. But we also know that we are working with states, because as much as we talk about this at the federal level, there are states who are executing and drafting new laws that are passing related to leave and workplace flexibility, and it's paid. And I think that there is an excellent opportunity here to share this story at the state level to even get more support and security when we think about how some states mandate paid leave and flexibility. So my mind goes there immediately. I think the other thing we were excited to do, we have a newsletter that goes out to 750,000 people. And these are stakeholders, partners. And so the first thing when Mary's team contacted us is we said, if you send us what you've been doing and work out, we will spotlight it in that, because we need people to be hopeful and to see change in different ways. And as Mary said earlier, this could take decades to make the changes we really want to see to modernize FMLA. So every win is a spark to keep the conversation going. And for us, every win is an opportunity to educate the nation's people managers about the importance of leave to the long-term sustainability of good talent in the workplace. Even though the latest job reports look a little different than we expected, many of our workplaces are still short of the talent we need to get the jobs done so that the U.S. can continue to be one of the most productive countries in the world. And when you allow people to attend to their needs at home in a way that allows them to continue working as well, you're able to retain that talent. And if this is a short-term issue or even long, retaining that talent is good for the bottom line of the business. We have to tell that story, that the more we focus on what the outside needs are. Now, we can't cover all your outside needs, but we provide that flexibility. That's the issue. Provide the flexibility to our workers to handle these needs as they come up. The better we are all in the long term. And I think the more people, our elected officials, hear about that, the more they'll want to entertain larger changes to documents like the federal, like FMLA, and even there are tons of other workplace related federal laws that we need changes to.
That's cool. So, let's say you are that HR representative or you're that manager and the employee is coming to you as the first or the second stop.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to them about how to handle this request from an employee?
First, with empathy. Whether you know about being sick or you've been sick or you've been a caregiver doesn't matter. I want you to listen with empathy. And that's not sympathy. I want you, they're two totally different things. I want you just to hear that person's perspective and how it's impacting them. Hear their concerns and their fears. And where you think you can add value to them and you can quickly help them, feel free to do so. That relationship is so important. Sherman has data that says, people leave jobs because of bad managers. They don't leave it because they don't like the CEO. They leave it because the person who impacts their life the most at work is their direct manager. And so even though the person may come to you and it seems like they're at their wits' end and their energy is off, I need you to be empathetic and at least listen. And then once you listen, understand you don't have to solve the problem for them, that there's someone who is there, like HR, that can assist you in the process, but make them feel comfortable seeking that support from HR. HR gets this bad rap. If you go into HR, it's a bad day, right? But I think HR, for me, we contribute to lives and livelihoods, right? HR is where you get professional development. Someone has to recommend you. HR is where you get the note that says you're getting a raise or we're providing childcare. HR gives so much. And I want people to start thinking of a place that can give all the things that you think you need while you're a worker as a resource and be supportive of you because they do have the resources. And for people managers, you're a partner with HR. HR shouldn't be managing your people, but the two of you working in concert to make sure your employees have the best experience possible, especially when they have now bent your ear about something that is so critically important to them and their long-term sustainability with you as an employee is critical. So we say lead with empathy. And if you do that, that will open the door to a relationship where I think that employee will feel comfortable coming to you and you comfortable saying, I don't know the answer. Let's take it to someone who does have the answer.
Very good. Great answer there.
Mhm.
So, Mary, why do you think this clarification is so important for patients and families, but also for employers? And maybe Emily just answered that employees are a company's best resource. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think Emily did a great job of answering that. And just to add to that, it is critically important. I mean, look, we've got 60 million US workers who are eligible under FMLA. This is
Mhm.
very big, right? And in terms of what Emily was saying, we say the same thing here at FSR. Uh, People are our greatest assets in corporate America. If we don't have healthy people, we don't have healthy companies. And if we don't have healthy companies, we don't have a healthy America.
Mm.
So it's in all of our best interests to support medical research first and foremost, so that we have a better understanding about the health of our employees and that we can have the best therapies for our employees who need appropriate medications. And to learn as much as we can about these diseases so we can prevent many of these diseases if we have a better understanding. And this all takes research, which brings us right back to
Mhm.
supporting corporate America, employees to give of themselves on behalf of the nation to get this understanding for a healthy nation. And it's really why we just launched as another kind of stream to this campaign is the Champions for Change. And what that effort is about, we are now asking every company in America to give at least one paid day off to employees who enroll in a clinical trial. And we're doing that for many, many reasons. Emily talked about some of them. Some under the FMLA might get paid, some may not. So it's part of the compensation. But John, what it really does is it starts that conversation in corporate America about the importance of clinical trials. And it tells employees that companies have your back. We are all in this together, and we are supportive of this. And if that's just one step of providing a paid day off, that's a huge step for that individual who is enrolling in clinical trials. So again, every company in America can do this. And we just kicked it off, and we have 12 companies now who have joined us. And we're going to be building this across America as part of this ongoing educational awareness campaign and supportive campaign for medical research in this country.
Wow, Mary, well, make sure you send me the article about that, because I think that our members would love to hear about that latest part of the initiative, because I know we do these discussions and then you're like, well, what next? What else can I do? And that's such a low-hanging fruit for an organization that does one, especially there's so many organizations that are in the life sciences and research and development. Having gone to college in the Research Triangle Park, just for me, that resonates so much in terms of what those organizations can do to put their foot first and show their commitment. And John, if I can say one other thing about the importance of this discussion, I talk about the people manager. For our HR professionals that may happen to be here, it's important that they know FMLA and that somebody on your team knows it well. Even here on our policy team, I have an amazing woman, Catherine, she just knows the nooks and crannies of this. And so in every HR office where you can have someone with that specialized expertise, I would do so, because there's so many times where there's FMLA, there's ADA, there's the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. There are all these pieces of the pie when you talk about workplace leave that someone needs to be able to interconnect to best serve that worker who may need a little bit of it all, depending on what's going on with them. And so for my HR professionals out there, you've got to understand the eligibility nuances. You've got to know that the accepted methods for determining and defining that 12-month leave period. You've got to know the definition of what a serious health condition is and how it impacts approval. You got to know about documentation and maintenance of documentation. And you have to know about how you pay, the accounts you have for pay and benefit impacts, and then navigating the state laws, as I said earlier. And, one of the things SHRM members, I think, are the smartest HR professionals in the world, because we give constant resources and training. But if you are out there and you've not attended a training on FMLA, I would tell you, quickly do so, especially as the country is talking more about flexibility and leave. And it's important that if you are an HR professional, you know as much about it as you can.
So I'm gonna jump right into this one then, because this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. Because either companies may not know about this clarification, or they may not be in favor of just letting employees run off to have their blood tested 2 or 3 hours away and miss work, or I'm oversimplifying, but one of the things that we saw at FSR when we started putting out the news release on the clarification was a lot of interest from the legal community, right? So why do you think they were so interested? And I'm gonna connect a dot that I think can easily be connected, and that is, I assume that what they wanted to do is they were saying to companies, you got to do this, right? You got. I mean, this clarification says you need to work with this patient and let them go to that test. Is that what's happening here, Emily?
Look, I'll say the clarification directly affects compliance. And
Okay.
remember what I told you earlier, the majority of our companies in this country are small and mid-sized companies. So the size of their HR staff doesn't allow for that specificity and training that I just talked about. And so who do they go to get the resources they need? They likely have outside counsel, or in-house that assist them with the compliance.
Hmm.
So even though compliance is such a big part of the job of the HR professional, often legal is assisting inside. And so for them, this is about doing their job and assisting their clients. The other thing is, you heard me give you that list of all the things the HR professional needs to know about FMLA. It is complex. It is why it is helpful to have someone who is an expertise and understands the myriad of nuances and the interplay between FMLA and other types of leave, like ADA and other things. And so you need someone who understands that nuance. So I think for them, it was about being able to serve their clients and the community as it relates to this. You know, where SHRM comes in with the legal and we join together with our HR professionals is we have the tools and templates so that that small HR shop can, log on to SHRM and get the tools and templates for how they do this. But if you're not a SHRM member or you're someone who's brand new, doesn't know about SHRM, you're likely going to turn to legal for that support. So that's why I think that compliance aspect has such a legal nuance to it at times that many seasoned HR professionals and FMLA specialists know. But for legal, they're who are getting the first call often when there's some confusion. Or think about when you got 12 people that need to be out on FMLA at the same time. How do you decide who gets what, right? Getting
Hmm.
that outside person to tell you, here's where your risks are, here's what are the most serious situations and things of that nature. So I think that's why.
Yeah, of course, a lot of like you said, what if 12 people went out at once? You still got to keep the lights on.
Whoop.
The work
Yes,
still
indeed.
has to be
It has to
done.
get done, right? And so
Yeah,
how do you say no compassionately?
yeah.
Because business still does have to be done, right? And so I think having that outside third party, especially in a small or mid-sized company, has been helpful, and that's why legal's been such a big partner here.
Yeah. All right. So, Mary, I want to go back to you because clinical trials are so important. I've interviewed many, many researchers here on the podcast who are involved with clinical trials, even the pharma companies who have to invest so much money to try and get a drug through. And there has not been a new drug specifically for sarcoidosis in something like 70 years or something like that. So these clinical trials are critical as we try to find a way to treat sarcoidosis. This is a step. This is a huge, big first step. As Emily called it, a great end around, great strategy. We got the clarification and it worked. But what's next? What can be done next, or what are you thinking about next?
Thank you, John, for that question. So we have put together a coalition. It's a coalition to transform clinical trial engagement. And again, Emily, perhaps this is something to share with all of your human resources across the country because we're inviting companies to join us on this. And we have now 29 companies, including American Heart Association, American Thoracic Society, and many others. And we are really working together as patient organizations, advocates, researchers, employers. There are some medical societies, and again, industry partners on practical solutions to continue to break down the other barriers that were identified in this. And so we have 3 active work groups in this really fantastic coalition that we have now. And so one of them is on patient education and engagement. One of them is on expanding compensation, and one is on corporate infrastructure and job protections. And so we're tackling all of this. And the reason why we're tackling this is because we want to tackle what were some of the other barriers in the survey, IRB approved survey that we learned about. And so it's compensation was one of them. The other one was, and this was number one actually, was that the Black community is not being asked to participate in clinical trials. So we need to do more awareness about that. We need to have clinicians talking to their patients. We need to have patients with information going to the doctors to start that conversation as well, right? So it's all of us working together to ensure that these barriers are breaking. Number one, that we understand what they are, and number two, that we are empowered to break these barriers down to make it easier for employees across America to enroll in clinical trials. So a lot coming up, a lot more work to do. But again, very motivated coalition working collectively in this area.
And Mary, I want to bounce right back to you again, too. So you just mentioned this Champions for Change initiative, which is the idea that companies would voluntarily give employees a paid day off to go participate. I mean, some of them do it anyway, but the rule with the clarification is that you can go without losing your job, but as Emily pointed out, you may not be paid. So how are you working directly with companies to try and get them to sort of buy into this whole concept?
Well, we're educating companies about the importance of this opportunity to join this Champions for Change. It is, again, an opportunity for them to highlight for their employees their commitment and their support of the individuals in their companies to enroll by providing one paid day off, making them understand that it's bigger than that, though. It's really about the conversation in corporate America, as I was saying earlier, and the support of corporate America for their employees. And I really believe strongly if we can get companies to do this across America, this is no doubt also going to add on to what has already been done to break down these barriers to really make a difference in all medical research in this country. And again, FSR, sarcoidosis, rare disease. But when I was CEO in the cardiovascular space, we heard from women, leading cause of death of women, and the barriers getting into clinical trials. And if we can break it down for all of these diseases, we as a country are going to do much better in medical research. There's no doubt about it. And as a country, we need to do better. Sarcoidosis has been around 150 years, right? And we have to have better therapies. We have to have better understanding of the disease. And this is just one disease. So multiply that by thousands of diseases, right? We must do better as a country. And we can do better, and we are doing better by breaking down these important barriers and engaging corporate America. Again, people are their biggest asset. Getting back to that whole, truth and realization that companies really need to pay attention about and support in this area.
Emily, same question to you. Looking forward, how do you see FMLA shaping the future of workforce support for employees?
Well, I actually see the states taking the lead because it's just so hard to get just a large change to that piece of legislation, right? So I see states who are being innovative about paid leave, and I see states copying them. Now, for us, the problem is every state is different. And that is really hard for a multi-state business who is an HR professional trying to do compliance in each of those states too. So I'm hoping that we'll start to see some cohesiveness across the country and how states are managing paid leave. But like many things lately, our state legislatures are moving and doing work at a faster pace than Congress. And so I see the growth and opportunity across the country in the state chambers before I see major change here in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here today. Let's talk about takeaways. Emily, I'll start with you. What would you like people who've been listening to this conversation to take away?
One, lead with empathy. Whether you are the CEO, the people manager, the HR professional, or even the colleague and peer who looks over and see that their colleague is absent a lot lately. Lead with empathy. I think that's critically important. Adopt as an organization supportive practices. And so again, when we talk about leading with empathy, the action is that our leaders should share their stories. about, and it doesn't have to be this illness, about how they've dealt with this, how they've been able to, we talk about work-life integration as opposed to balance, right? How they've been able to integrate being a caregiver or dealing with a long-term chronic health disease. When you hear your leaders talk and share their stories, it opens the door for you to feel more comfortable doing so. Education of your teams. I think it's important to talk to the entire organization about your stance as an organization on how you take care of the whole worker. But then in the HR and people manager arena, I think it's critically important that you remain educated about the resources that are there to help you and your employers. So the state laws regarding leave, the federal laws, which include FMLA, make sure you stay educated on those. And I think I mentioned normalizing the conversation, start with leadership. And for our HR professionals and the lawyers that are assisting them and the other staff that's assisting them, let's stay compliant. Right. As much, there's a lot of change and find that person in your organization who could be the subject matter expertise on these issues so that they can keep you compliant. And then leverage any additional resources. The resources that Mary talks about in her organization, SHRM has tons of resources, some of which are actually free. And then others, if you're members, there are lots of resources that can help you, and we're here to help.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Mary, how about takeaways?
Yeah, for the audience, thank you. So I would say, spread the word and share your stories. So help raise awareness by sharing the FMLA clarification press release that we have on our website. And again, back to Emily's point, the resources that both SHRM has and FSR has on Ignore No More. We also invite patient testimonials. So whether about barriers or positive trial experience or using the FMLA to strengthen, right? By sharing these stories, you help to strengthen advocacy and motivate others to do the same. For patients, I would say, start and use the conversation. Talk with your families now, even if you're not in a clinical trial or even thinking about enrolling. Just have those conversations with your doctor and family so that you're ready if trial opportunities come up. And if you're enrolled in a trial, speak with your HR department about FMLA and your doctor. We know this, we're already hearing from doctors across America that it is helping patients stay in clinical trials who might have dropped out otherwise. And for employers, I would say, take action. This is a huge opportunity. Make sure your teams know about this protection and consider joining the Champions for Change paid time off that I was talking about earlier by offering just even one paid day off for trial participation. And we can provide guidance on how to integrate that into your leave program that you already have at your company. And finally, I would say join the movement. This is a movement. We're actively recruiting coalition members, corporations, hospitals, organizations to partner with FSR and the coalition to transform clinical trial engagement. And finally, I would say along with that is to get involved. Visit Ignore No More or Stop Sarcoidosis, our organization, and connect with us directly because there's a lot going on in this space. We're going to continue with a lot going on in this space as we continue to build out the coalition. And this is a major priority for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research and these coalition members. And finally, I just want to say thank you to Emily. I mean, can you imagine, John, how challenging it is for a small rare disease to reach hundreds of thousands of people with a messaging. And Emily, you've done that with SHRM. We're so grateful to you about this FMLA clarification. We're so grateful for this really important partnership. We're so grateful to be able to work collaboratively together on this important initiative impacting employees and employers across America. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mary McGowan, CEO of the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research, and Emily Dickens, Chief of Staff and Head of Government Affairs and Corporate Secretary for the Society for Human Resources Management. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here today.
Thank you, John.